Think of the last time someone raised their voice in a meeting and everyone's eyes turned to you. The air thickened. Your pulse spiked. And in that split second, your feet were already planning the exit. Not literally walking out, but checking out, deflecting, laughing it off, changing the subject, anything to escape the heat. That impulse to run, even when standing still, is the invisible tax we pay in every confrontation. And every time we pay it, the price goes up. Here's what most people miss. Intimidation doesn't work because the other person is stronger. It works because we move first. We flinch, we fill silence, we justify too fast, we explain before anyone asks. The intimidator doesn't win by force. They win by reaction. And the moment the room sees you react, the lesson is written. Pressure works on you. Now, before we go further into how to reverse this pattern, I want to invite you to subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. Why? Because over the next few weeks, we're building a full series on presence, power, and practical psychology, tools you can actually use the same day you learn them. Everything we discuss here connects to a bigger framework, and the pinned comment below will guide you to the full playlist and resources. If you're serious about mastering confrontation and never being pushed around again, you'll want to follow this through. Hit subscribe, turn on the bell, and let's continue. So back to the moment of pressure. You're in the room. Someone escalates. The instinct is to match their energy or vanish into explanation. But here's the shift. Staying is not the same as exploding. Staying means anchoring, and anchoring is a skill, not a personality trait. Machiavelli wrote that men judge by what they see before they judge by what they hear. In confrontation, that means the first verdict isn't about your argument, it's about your stability. Do you look like someone who can hold the floor, or someone the floor is holding hostage? That judgment happens in 3 seconds, and it's made through micro-signals: hand position, eye contact, vocal rhythm, breathing pace. Logic comes second. Presence comes first. Let me describe a scene you've probably lived. You're in a tense conversation. The facts are on your side. You know you're right, but your voice climbs half an octave. Your breathing shortens. Your hands move too much, trying to sculpt urgency into the air. You talk faster because silence feels like losing. And when it's over, you replay it in your head and realize the logic didn't fail. The presence failed. The other person wasn't more correct. They were just more still. Confrontations are not ideal tribunals. They're physiological arenas. And the winner is usually the one who controls their own state, not the one who controls the facts. The group doesn't remember who had the better argument. They remember who seemed unbothered. That memory becomes reputation. Reputation becomes authority. Authority becomes leverage, and leverage is what lets you stop running forever. Now let's talk about what's underneath that urge to run. It's not cowardice, it's association. Somewhere in your past, confrontation meant humiliation. Maybe a parent who shouted until you crumbled. Maybe a teacher who made an example of you. Maybe a relationship where every disagreement ended in emotional wreckage. So your nervous system learned confrontation equals damage, and damage must be avoided. But here's the problem with that learning: it's outdated. You're no longer that child, that student, that partner. You have resources now. You have language. You have the ability to pause, to breathe, to choose. But the old program is still running in the background, and every time pressure arrives, it hits the same button: flee. The body doesn't ask if it's still true. It just executes. The way out is not to fight the program. It's to rewrite it, slowly, practically, one confrontation at a time. And the tool for rewriting it is this: presence is a practice, not a gift. You don't wait to feel calm. You build calm through repetition, and the feeling follows. Here's the image I want you to hold for the rest of this video, and I'll return to it twice more. Think of a tree in a storm. The branches whip. The leaves scatter. But the roots stay buried. The trunk doesn't run. It doesn't argue with the wind. It just stays. And because it stays, the wind eventually moves on. That's the metaphor. You are the tree. The confrontation is the storm. And your only job is to keep your roots down while the wind does what wind does. So how do you stay rooted when every cell in your body is screaming to move? You intervene at the body level first, because the body speaks to the brain before the brain speaks to the body. This is not philosophy. It's neuroscience. When your body signals danger, your prefrontal cortex goes offline. When your body signals controlled challenge, your prefrontal cortex stays online. The difference is a 60-second ritual. Here's the ritual. Before you speak, before you react, do this. 3 slow breaths. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Feel your belly rise. Don't rush it. This is not a formality. This is a message to your amygdala. We are not dying. Next, check your posture. Shoulders down, spine straight, feet planted shoulder width apart. Hands visible still. Now your voice. 70% of your normal speed. Slight downward inflection. Constant volume. Clean pauses. No filler sounds. No nervous laughter. No rushing to fill silence. What you've just done is reset the room's emotional thermostat. Because here's the physiological truth. People unconsciously match the dominant rhythm in the environment. If the dominant rhythm is your calm, the environment bends toward you. Voices lower to meet yours. Eyes turn to you for the next cue. Questions get directed to the person who looks unshaken. Authority stops being a title and becomes a presence. And presence is contagious. This is what Machiavelli observed in the palaces of Renaissance Italy, and it plays out the same way in boardrooms, family dinners, and street corners today. Power doesn't flow toward the loudest voice. It flows toward the most stable one. Perception creates the channel, and control follows perception. If this is landing for you, do me a favor, hit the like button and drop a comment below with one word, roots, so I know you're tracking with the metaphor, and if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. This channel is built for people who want to upgrade how they show up under pressure, and every video builds on the last. Let's keep going. Now someone might object, but what if the other person is wrong and aggressive? Shouldn't I confront them with equal force? No, confront with form, not fire. Useful firmness is clarity, not volume. Here's how. When someone escalates, most people either escalate back or collapse inward. Both are reactions. Both hand control to the other person. The third option is to slow the interaction down by asking questions that require thinking. Thinking requires oxygen. Oxygen requires slower breathing. Slower breathing lowers arousal. You're not debating. You're re-engineering the room's physiology. Ask, what specifically concerns you? Watch them shift from emotional generality to concrete detail. Ask, what evidence weighs most for you? Now they have to retrieve data, not just vent. Ask, if we adjust this point, does the rest work? You've moved from combat to collaboration. Without surrendering an inch, here's what not to do. Don't fill silence out of panic. Don't interrupt to reclaim respect. Don't over-explain to fix your image. Respect doesn't come from the avalanche of words. It comes from cadence. Every time you rush to occupy space, the subtext is fear of losing it. Every time you let silence land, the subtext is, time is on my side. And in group settings, perceived time and perceived control are twins. Let's go back to the tree. The storm howls. The trunk doesn't explain itself. It doesn't justify its roots. It doesn't issue a press release. It just stays. And because it stays, the storm loses interest. The wind moves on. The tree is still there. You do the same. When the pressure comes, you don't meet it with matching pressure. You meet it with structure, breath, posture, voice, pause, question. The other person can yell, but they can't yell alone for long. Emotion needs a duet. If you refuse to sing the harmony, the solo dies out. Now here's where it gets practical. Let's talk scenarios. You're in a job interview. Unexpected curveball question. First instinct, scramble, fill the gap, prove competence, stop, make eye contact. Say, great question. Give me a second. Take one breath. Then answer with what you know at 70% speed. The panel won't remember the pause. They'll remember the composure. Next scenario, team meeting, harsh critique of your project. Someone says, this is unrealistic. Don't defend the whole thing. Ask, which part feels unrealistic given the current timeline? You've shifted the frame from total judgment to specific problem solving. The tension drops because now there's a target, not just an attack. Third scenario, family argument, high emotion. Don't fight over memories. Fight over rhythm. Speak slowly. Don't interrupt. Summarize what you heard in neutral terms. What I'm hearing is X. Does that sound right? The other person has to slow down to confirm or correct. The environment adjusts to your tempo. Here's the hardest one, personal attack. Someone goes after your character, your competence, your intent. The trap is trying to prove they're wrong. Emotional proof usually looks like confession. The Machiavellian move is not to defend your honor. It's to demonstrate imperviousness. Say, interesting perspective. Thanks for sharing. Then move on. Not sarcasm. Anti-fuel. The audience sees who's playing to provoke and who's playing to resolve. Reputation is born in that gap, but none of this survives without consistency. 1 display of calm can look like luck. 2 coincidence. 100 character. And it's perceived character that creates the shield. After a while, people stop testing you because it doesn't work. They learn that raising their voice doesn't change your posture, that their urgency doesn't dictate your pace. Conflicts become conversations faster. Shortcuts to intimidation get abandoned. Your name becomes shorthand for pressure doesn't work here. If you're finding this valuable, take a moment to save this video to a playlist. Seriously, you'll want to come back to this when the heat is on. And share it with someone who's tired of being pushed around. Let's build a community of people who don't run. Consistency isn't inhuman coldness. Emotions are still human. Explosions are just optional. Feel what comes, but negotiate only with what serves the outcome. When you're about to say something that will feel good now and cost you later, use the pause. The pause is a tiny gate between stimulus and response where strategy slips in. The phrase you don't say is a bridge you don't burn. The room won't remember what you swallowed. They'll remember what you didn't shout. Machiavelli's most famous line is, "It is better to be feared than loved." That's true in insecure worlds. But there's a third route: be respected for not breaking. Fear evaporates when the enforcer leaves. Love shifts with the mood of the week, but respect for the person who stays steady when others shake. That's sticky. It lasts because the group needs a reference point. And in conflict, reference beats charm. Let's get tactical. Here's the plan. It's simple, not easy. First, use small confrontations as practice. Traffic disputes, line cutters, terse emails. Apply the 60-second ritual every time. Second, pick one specification question and memorize it. Use it until it's automatic. Third, create a physical anchor, a pen you hold still, a coin in your pocket. Something tactile that reminds you, roots down. Fourth, adjust your speaking speed like a dimmer switch. In heat, dial it down 1 notch. Fifth, after each episode, do a 60-second audit. Where did I speed up? Where did I pause? Repetition builds internal predictability. When the other side insists on escalating, you don't match them. Matching is their choreography, not yours. You're dancing a different rhythm. So they either tire out, follow your lead, or isolate themselves in their own chaos. In every outcome, you keep command of your state. That's the only command that guarantees all others, because no one leads outward when they're drowning inward. And that's the heart of the lesson. Control yourself first and the rest aligns. Back to the tree one last time. Roots down, storm above. The storm doesn't care about the tree's feelings. The tree doesn't waste energy arguing with the storm. The storm will pass. The tree will remain. That's not poetry. That's strategy. In 120 days of deliberate practice, you'll notice side effects. People start asking for your take before deciding. You get invited into hard conversations because they trust there won't be a fire. Debates get shorter. Crises get more technical. Gossip loses interest in you because you don't react like fuel. Nothing mystical, just social economics. Systems reward whoever lowers coordination cost. Don't confuse calm with passivity. Passivity accepts injustice. Calm confronts it with method. When something is unacceptable, your posture doesn't shake, but your position is firm. No, same tone. Repeat as needed. Word choice stays clean. Cadence stays yours. The boundary becomes clear without spectacle. Clear boundaries without spectacle are shockingly effective. They rarely turn into theater. They often turn into agreement. Sometimes they turn into necessary separation. In every case, you walk out whole. And if one day you slip, don't dramatize. Notice, repair, resume. Make the commitment to form public. That last conversation got away from the standard I hold myself to. Let's reset. Transparency about method reinforces that there is a method. The group learns it's not innate talent, it's practice. That teaches more than any inspirational speech. Stop running, and intimidation loses its job. The person who wanted to drag you into urgency realizes urgency doesn't live in you anymore. The person who bet on your defensiveness finds questions. The person who expected volume finds pauses. It's disarmament by opposite. You don't take away their weapon. You remove the moving target inside yourself. Without a moving target, loud shots ricochet into nothing. Take this into your week. In every difficult conversation, do the 60-second ritual. Pick one specification question, give one clean pause, summarize once what you heard, restate your point with cadence, no raising, no running. Track the small wins, a tone that dropped, an attack that became data, a meeting that ended early. Repetition here is not boredom, it's identity construction. In the end, never be intimidated again is not a promise that no one will try. It's the recognition that attempts stop when they stop paying off. You make that happen not with magic words, but with simple, repeated, visible signals. Machiavelli would call it effective appearance. We can call it presence that solves. Stay, breathe, speak like someone who doesn't run. And when pressure comes, remember, silence is leverage, questions are brakes, consistency is a shield. If this resonated, subscribe to keep receiving practical lessons on presence, strategy, and applied power. Share it with someone ready to stop running and start anchoring. And I'll see you in the next one, roots down always. But let's go further. You may have noticed something subtle in each story shared so far. Intimidation rarely lands in a vacuum. It spreads through a group, harvesting collective silence. What if, instead of only anchoring for yourself, you could become the calm anchor for others too? Leadership in confrontation isn't always about domination or outsmarting. Sometimes it's pure environmental design. When you demonstrate stability, you quietly invite others to anchor as well. This is the social power of modeling. People mirror not words, but regulated nervous systems. That's why heated debates spiral faster in rooms without a model. Everyone tunes to chaos, and nobody sets a baseline. To consciously become the steady axis, start watching for group temperature, the same way you monitor your own pulse. Is someone fidgeting or whispering anxiously? Is there a cluster holding their breath, eyes darting between speakers? Imagine, in those micro moments, doing the unexpected, pausing, scanning the room, and asking softly, "Let's stay with this for a moment. Anyone else feeling the tension?" That question isn't about exposing vulnerability. It's about releasing pressure and distributing presence. Notice how after you do this, voices drop, shoulders unlock, and caution becomes curiosity. You become known not just for self-command, but for group command, a rare skill worth cultivating. Share below if you've ever calmed a room simply by holding steady. Bring your story and let others learn from it. If you're new here, remember to save this video. The examples will help you anchor next time pressure arrives. Confidence is not solo sport. The right environment amplifies it. Let's build that environment together. Now, back to Jung. Jung saw confrontation not simply as conflict, but as individuation opportunity, a moment when the shadow side of psyche emerges, ripe for integration. Instead of demonizing discomfort, Jungian wisdom encourages you to ask, what is this confrontation inviting me to own? Maybe an assertiveness you've neglected, perhaps a boundary long overdue. Each bout of intimidation can reveal where old scripts no longer serve. Are you reenacting parent-child dynamics? Fearful of exclusion? Hungry for approval from the loudest critic? These are shadow whispers. The practical move is to notice the pattern, name it, and intentionally write a new response. Here's a quick exercise. Next time tension rises, mentally label the core emotion. I feel dismissed, I fear ridicule, I need acceptance. Then before reacting, ask, is this really about the present or am I reliving an old scene? When you identify the true arena, you regain the freedom to choose. The script is yours to edit line by line, decision by decision. Returning to our tree metaphor, think about what roots symbolize in myth and psyche. Jung wrote about the rooted self, stable, connected to archetypal sources of strength. Intimidation tries to sever that connection, making you doubt the ground you stand on. But the deeper your roots in values, experience, and self-knowledge, the less any storm can uproot you. Some roots grow through pain, some through reflection, some through community support. The important thing is to nurture them daily. When storms come, you don't build new roots. You rely on what's already there. What practices deepen roots? Consistent reflection, for one. Journaling not just after wins, but after losses. Ask, where did I move away from who I am? What prompted that shift? Some find ritual grounding in breathwork, others in morning walks, others in focused silence. The practice itself matters less than the steady return. It's the repetition, not the perfection, that builds anchor points. Here's another scene you might recognize. Conflict erupts in public. maybe a store, maybe on the street. The audience is unpredictable. Eyes on you, anticipation thick. Your instinct, either perform for the crowd or shrink from view. But the lesson is the same. Stay rooted, speak with calibration, and never tie your worth to their reaction. It's about process, not applause. If you resonate with this idea, anchoring for an audience, not just yourself, drop a comment with the word anchor. And if someone else's story here inspires you today, reply and build the conversation further. That's how new roots grow in a community. Let's get practical again. Sometimes confrontation isn't verbal, it's silent. Passive aggression, exclusion, backhanded compliments. These are storms that test invisible stability. The best move? Name the pattern, not the person. Say, I notice there's quiet resistance to this idea. Is there something unspoken we need to surface? This brings air to the roots and often diffuses tension without direct combat. Practice this. In your next ambiguous situation, try the pattern naming prompt. Watch how bringing the hidden dynamic into the open reduces intimidation for everyone involved. Share your results below. The nuances matter and help everyone learn. Across all these themes, the hidden principle is simple. Confrontation is less about winning and more about growing. Each microstorm is a rehearsal for deeper adulthood. Each pause moment is a symbolic crossing, from automatic flight to chosen form. Now let's revisit Machiavelli once more. People misread him as cold or manipulative, but his biggest lesson is psychological. The appearance of stability matters, but Jung goes deeper. The reality of stability breeds genuine change. Combine them. You get applied presence. Command your own anchor, model it externally, and set the rhythm for the space around you. How do you know you're progressing? 3 signs to watch for. First, you start seeking out healthy confrontation instead of dodging it. Growth finds you in challenge, not comfort. Second, you notice pauses in others' storms. Your calm progressively infects their tempo. Third, habitual stressors lose their edge. Words that once triggered adrenaline now evoke curiosity. Map these on paper. List your last 3 confrontations, the dominant rhythm and your anchor point. Track whether you moved from chaos to equilibrium. Progress here is not linear. Some days the storm wins. That's normal. If today's video challenges you, hit subscribe for ongoing reflection. Every week we bring new tools, narratives, and real-life applications. Stay tuned and keep returning to the pinned comment for reminders and featured stories. Let's deepen the metaphoric image. Imagine your tree in winter. The environment is barren, emotions frozen, old supporters distant. In this season, roots become survival. You don't lean on external validation. You lean on memory, proving resilience in silence. Remember, even when the canopy is bare, the roots are alive. As you move through your year, document root moments, times you stayed when flight was easier. Share these in the comments. Someone will read your story and carry it into their next storm. That's the cycle of practical presence. Now let's address a group context. Meetings, teams, panels, places where intimidation feeds on social proof. The key principle: distribute anchor points. Open by inviting reflection. Before we respond, let's each take a moment to gather our thoughts. You'll notice the room resets. Power shifts from noise to process. Experiment with this tool. At your next group conflict, be the initiator of anchoring. Offer a non-reactive prompt. Report the effect below. True authority is measured by group calm, not individual victory. If you've watched this far, a reminder. Liking and sharing isn't just engagement, it's investment in collective stability. The stronger our community of anchor points, the easier it becomes to thrive in storms old and new. Briefly, let's talk about long-term transformation. Over months, as you practice structured presence, old labels begin to fade. Words like anxious, reactive, and timid lose meaning. You stop identifying with the worst 5 minutes in each confrontation and start tracking the best 30 seconds. Progress is felt in the body first. Sleep improves, headaches vanish, meetings feel shorter, relationships deepen. If this sounds too good to be true, remember the method. It's repetition, not luck. Over and over. The identity of someone who never runs is built by thousands of small choices, most invisible. In closing, always recall your life will be as stormy as your environment, but your experience depends on how deep you root, how often you return to anchor, and how gently you invite others to do the same. Save this into your playlist. Revisit before difficult conversations and come back each week for new practical tools. Drop your own anchoring techniques below. What works for you may become the next myth for someone else. Roots down, storms above, presence within. And as Machiavelli hinted, mastery isn't never feeling pressure. It's never being moved against your own will. We stand together, never running, always anchoring. And remember, every step forward might feel small, but over time, these small shifts accumulate into a new standard for your presence. If you ever doubt that you're making progress, pause and replay your own recent confrontations. Listen for the moments where your voice stayed steady for one breath longer than before, or your silence grew more intentional, not fearful. Those are the seeds of mastery. A powerful reminder. Mastery is less about never slipping and more about returning to your anchor again and again. It's the willingness to reset, recalibrate, and recommit. This gentle discipline builds a self-trust no external approval can replace. Here's a closing image. Imagine the roots beneath your feet, glowing faintly brighter with each courageous pause, each non-reactive reply, and each collaborative question. No confrontation, no matter how dramatic, can sever those roots when you nurture them consciously. So let's keep growing together. Revisit this series whenever you hit a rough patch. The comments are always open for shared wisdom and practical stories. Subscribe, comment, and share, because real community is built in precisely these moments, where presence becomes both individual and shared. And as you leave today, this is your charge. Become the person who never runs from storms, but quietly teaches others how to stand their ground too. In the end, that's what turns confrontation from ordeal into opportunity. Roots down, eyes forward, always anchoring. One more practical note before we close. Over the next few weeks, start a simple tracking habit. After any confrontation, large or small, write down 3 things: the trigger, your physical response, and one anchor you used. This habit creates a feedback loop. Over time, patterns reveal themselves. Maybe certain voices activate old wounds. Maybe specific environments amplify your flight reflex. Awareness is the first layer of mastery. Once you see the pattern, you can interrupt it. This tracking isn't therapy, it's tactical reflection. Keep it brief, keep it honest, and revisit it monthly. The data you gather becomes your personal playbook for staying rooted. If this resonates, share it forward. Send this video to someone who's been pushed around lately. Someone who needs to hear that intimidation is a strategy that only works when we cooperate with it. Tag them in the comments or simply forward the link. Real change spreads through shared tools, not hidden secrets. Now, final word on the tree metaphor. Trees don't grow roots to avoid storms. They grow roots because storms are inevitable. The wisdom is in preparation, not prediction. You can't control when pressure arrives, but you can decide right now to deepen what holds you steady. So take the 60-second ritual seriously. Practice it in low-stakes moments, during traffic, in line at the store, before opening a tense email. Build the muscle memory now, so when the real storm hits, your body already knows the script. And when that day comes, and it will, you'll find yourself standing still while others scramble. Not because you're unfeeling, but because you've trained for exactly this moment. That's when you'll know you've stopped running for good. Subscribe, engage, and keep anchoring. I'll see you in the next one.